So first of all, thank you all for doing this. I'm hoping to have a really nuanced conversation that can help our community really understand what is and what isn't happening in Austin with regard to immigration enforcement. But I wanted to start just really discussing the law enforcement end of things. The field office division director for ICE's enforcement and removal operations said publicly in recent days at a community meeting in San Antonio, he said, quote, "We target only individuals with criminal records, conviction, gang members, national security. Anybody like that who poses a threat to you and me. We don't do checkpoints and we're not doing raids." So I just want to start by asking you, Eddie and Chief Davis, what have your conversations been at this point with federal officials, and what have they told you that they are doing in Austin at this point?
Well, I think for our perspective, obviously having those open lines of communications is incredibly important to figure out what's going on in our cities. And exactly what the field director said is exactly what he's telling us with regards to what their operations are. Their priorities have not changed. Their priorities prior to January 20th are the same priorities they're utilizing now. And again, those are the words he used for us. Also, again, they were talking about individuals that had final deportation orders as well. But for the most part, it was going to be targeted enforcement really in cities. And the reality of it is as well is that ICE ERO, because as you know, also HSI, which is the criminal investigative arm of ICE, have been operating in cities. I've been either in law enforcement or supervising law enforcement for almost 33 years. And they've been in our cities for a very, very long time. And so the priorities are still the same. It's just it's out there more now.
And I know that these relationships with your federal partners are really important, but who exactly have you talked to within the federal government who has relayed that to you?
Well, I spoke to the field director from ERO. We've spoken to HSI as well about what they're doing and what they're conducting. Now, obviously, HSI is actually investigating criminal aspects of things, and obviously then ERO does the civil immigration, federal immigration. And so we've spoken with them, and they've told us the same information as they did in San Antonio.
Chief, are you having ongoing conversations with federal officials at this point, or is it more sporadic? Can you describe sort of the nature and the frequency?
So we always have our federal partners. We always have open dialogue with our federal partners, and certainly more with the ERO since the last few months. But that communications with our federal partners is ongoing at all times.
So similarly, have you been told or kind of briefed on the extent of their operations in Austin, that they are focusing on the so-called most violent of violent?
Right. No, that's exactly what I've been told as well. And I think it's important to understand when you're dealing with violent felons, these are people that we want off of our streets. These are people that we are looking for as well. These are violent offenders that have caused severe harm to this community. So that's exactly what they're doing, and that's what we've been told.
And if I can just add as well, also we don't want to act as we're tone deaf either. And the director also had the same sensitivities and felt that we understand the fear that comes across a community, particularly our immigrant community, in any major city. Austin is no different than any major city in the United States. And so sensitive to those concerns. So when we talk about the violent criminals, we don't want to speak like that as a matter of, just very snippet in that, take our word for it type of thing, because we do understand the fear. But ultimately in the end, that is who they are conducting targeted enforcement after.
I just want to ask this as well, because you have better and different access than anyone else as law enforcement officials. Have you been told by the feds any sort of number of arrests that they have made in the past couple of weeks?
Yes, they have. They've made over about 30 arrests, at least in the first couple days, in the 26th and 27th, and they continue to remain active. Those dates are important because that was kind of like the beginning of ramping up of what they were doing. And again, of most of their numbers of what they have told me and what they've told us is, again, those individuals with criminal histories, individuals that had detainers, which has happened all the time with regards to detainers. And so it was about a little over 30 people, at least in those first couple of days. But again, targeted to individuals as the director had pointed out.
And those numbers similar or dissimilar or greater than what maybe we saw, in December or November or, during the Biden administration?
Tony, I think those are difficult because back then people didn't seem to really care what the numbers were, although they were always active in our cities. Now it's become an issue. And so now is why we're trying to keep track, at least, and having those conversations so that we can really separate fact from fiction and try to reduce the fear that's in the city while, again, ERO does what their mandate is.
Chief, I want to talk about the role of APD. I think there is some clarity around this, but can you just describe what is the role of the Austin Police Department and what is not the role of the Austin Police Department with regard to immigration enforcement?
Yeah, well, federal immigration is not the role of the police department to enforce federal immigration. Now, we will certainly be where the law dictates that we have to come assist. We will do that as a police department. But my priority has always been, from my very first meeting here, was about Austin and keeping Austin safe and priorities for Austin.
When you say there may be situations where you were sort of pressed into service or asked for assistance, can you give an example of what that could potentially look like or be like, just so that we're expectation setting for the public?
Yeah, I don't think we're there. I don't think we've seen that. We've been asked to do nothing, and I think that's important to talk about. There has been no ask of us. But I guess I'm thinking a traffic post blocking off an intersection, something like that, would be where we would come into play. But again, nothing has been asked of us.
And with regard to the service of warrants and things like that has been taking place, is the police department involved in that at all?
No, we are not.
Okay.
No. Again, federal that immigration status, that is not our role. And we have not been asked to partake and participate in that.
Not asked to participate in civil proceedings regarding immigration, but I think what I'm asking is if there is a pending warrant, an outstanding warrant that federals if it's criminal, excuse me, if feds are then moving on that warrant, they're trying to serve it, they're trying to get that person into custody, you could very much be involved in that.
Well, I would say, Tony, that we were probably looking for that person as well. If it is someone with an active felony warrant here, for an offense here, we were probably looking for that person as well.
But again, that's very much a criminal matter.
That's exactly it.
And generally dealing with very violent offenders who are being actively sought.
That's right.
at that time.
Yes.
Mayor, I just want to ask you and bring you into this conversation as well. How do you see sort of the landscape right now in Austin? There is sort of a sense that there is this new urgency around this topic and new fear around this topic. How is the mayor of a major city, how are you navigating that?
Well, you have to start off with the proposition that we don't have control over what it is that is creating so much of the fear. The city does not have the control, the mayor doesn't have the control. And as a result, I mean, we have to keep in mind this is a federal program, and to some degree you hear the state talk about it, but it is not a local program, and so we don't. I'm going to say it again because I think it's very important to repeat it. We don't have control. So how do you navigate? The way I see it is it's primarily three pillars. The first pillar is that as mayor, I'm going to do everything in my power to set the standard for not perpetuating a policy of fear and making sure that we're showing the appropriate humanity and the appropriate empathy for people that have contributed to our community. They support our community, and I don't want us to do anything that would contribute to this pain, this palpable pain and fear that we see in our community. The second thing is we're going to provide public safety. We're going to continue, as the chief has just pointed out, we're going to continue to do the things that APD ought to be doing to keep our community safe. And one of the key parts about that is that as we talk about what involvement and how we go about doing things, we've been working very hard for the past 2 years to make the public feel safe, and that includes things like a new contract with the police, with our police association. It means making sure that we're providing the resources they need, and we're going to continue to do what the law requires us to do in that regard to provide public safety. And then the third way of dealing with all this, I think, is I would say it this way: do no harm. I, as the mayor of this city, will work very hard so that we're not politicizing this issue. We're not taking action that may look good on social media. It might look good on X, but really what it's doing is spitting in the wind, because it's not getting us any value, and it might get us retribution. And if that happens, then it will fall heaviest on those that we most want to protect in terms of the fear that I talked about. So the way I'm approaching this is with those three values that I think are Austin values and how we move forward.
Are you basically saying that this is not necessarily or absolutely not the time or the topic for political gamemanship? That this is a time for really sober evaluation of what is happening in the city's resources?
We're dealing with a very real situation, and politicizing it right now is not going to gain us any real benefit in that. It is instead potentially going to put us in a situation where retribution is something that we're dealing with, and we need to be doing the things that we can do. For example, how do you mitigate this fear? One thing is you make sure that people, regardless of their immigration status, that may be victims of a crime, know that they can still talk with APD. They're not outsiders in that regard. Code enforcement. One of the things that we know is sometimes people take advantage of immigrants, and we need to make sure that at the City of Austin we're providing the sort of code enforcement. It's important for people to know their rights. I sat in this room late last week, I guess it was Friday of last week, and one of the people that I was visiting with, an American citizen, but also she had dual citizenship, she talked to me about her very strong fear and how she walks carrying her U.S. passport. Well, we need to make sure people know their rights as well, and that they have plans for how things work out. We need to be not politicizing, but doing those things that we can do so that people, we can mitigate some of that fear.
Chief, I did want to ask you, the mayor brought it up, but I did want to kind of underscore this point, which is that a number of people in our immigrant community are victims of crime. And so what can you tell those people who are victims of a property or even a violent crime, when they want to report that crime to local law enforcement and to the Austin Police Department?
Yeah, I mean, trust is such a big deal, and to the mayor's point, I mean, you hate to politicize anything, but these are, political times, I suppose, and it is something where you want people to feel comfortable. We know that this is a community that already is so underreported in the crimes that take place. But again, Austin for me is about making it a place that's safe for all. When I'm dealing with crimes, dealing with violent crimes, I'm looking at locations where crime occurs. That's what I'm thinking about, is every single person who lives here, and how can we make it safer?
Eddie, did you have anything to add to that as well? Because I know you've dealt with this issue in, of course, Dallas and going back to San Jose as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, the points that were made, obviously our victims and witnesses of crime need to know that we're safe, that they need to report. If they don't report, it makes the entire city of Austin less safe. And again, as the chief and myself, when I was a chief, I was not a stay-in-the-office chief, and I spoke to those communities. They didn't want a violent criminal living next door to them any more than anyone else did. But to the mayor's point, if there's individuals, otherwise law-abiding, undocumented residents that have given to this city, that have given to this country, that have given to every major city that I know of, that have given, and they need to understand and know that they can report crime to law enforcement to ensure that not only their communities are safe, but that the entire city is safe. You know, the reality of it is that, you know, law enforcement, public, you know, city, municipal law enforcement agencies have their role, federal government has their role. You know, with the resources that we have, as an example, and one of the reasons why we need to stay in our lane, so to speak, is you can talk to any criminologist in this country that will tell you that the vast majority of crime and violent crime perpetrated in this country are perpetrated by citizens of this country. And so when you have scarce resources, again, and we're looking at data, have to be smarter with the resources that the chief has and the city has. Where are you going to prioritize your efforts? Now, obviously, yes, TDA and other gangs need to be addressed. There's no question about it. If you commit violent crime and you shouldn't be in this country, then yes, you should. That is an area where the federal government needs to step in. But then understanding the lane we're in and where our priorities lie because of the scarce resources is something that's important that our community needs to know. Needs to know that we understand and we know that we need them to help us keep this entire city safe, not just pockets of neighborhoods throughout the city of Austin, or quite frankly, pockets of neighborhoods in the entire country.
With regard to the flow of information, I just want to ask both of you, who does have the connection with the feds, have they offered any kind of assurances or the flow of information, or what exactly you may be told? Will you be given a heads up if they're planning a major operation, or will you maybe potentially learn after the fact? I mean, I know that the flow of information could really be key with regard to keeping the community informed, and I think to the mayor's point, information is key in situations like this.
Yeah, so the meetings that I've had is they will let us know when they're doing something here in Austin. And again, this is the reality of it. They have been doing operations here almost daily, but it is now being talked about more. So they'll continue that. They'll continue to let us know when they are doing operations. They may not tell us the where and the when, but they will let us know when things are going to be occurring in the city.
Is that your understanding?
It is. Another place that's been incredibly valuable is we've all have seen, there's a lot of rumors that are being spread about different things, and you know, I can't even tell you the amount of misinformation that's being put out. And being able to pick up a phone to ask specifics, sometimes it'll be, yes, that's happening, and other times, no, that's absolutely not happening. And so again, we have to take them at their word right now. We got to believe them until we can't believe them, because having no information and having no communication with them does not serve us or anyone any good.
So just to kind of go over these points one more time, because this is really critical and I want to make sure we all understand. The Austin Police Department is in no way enforcing civil immigration laws. So being here illegally is not enough being here illegally alone is not enough to draw the interest or enforcement action by the Austin Police Department.
That is a correct statement.
There may be occasions where federal law enforcement may ask for some cooperation, some sort of assistance, but that has not happened at this point.
It has not.
During your tenure, since you have been here. At the same time, if there are actionable pending warrants for a violent offender in our community, the Austin Police Department may participate or even lead on arresting that person, again, with a violent pending warrant that needs to be served. The Austin Police Department, either on its own or in cooperation with a task force, may participate in that level of enforcement.
Yes, and my goal would be that we would get there before anybody else would.
But that's not necessarily.
That's right. That's right. That's anyone.
That is keeping the public safe
right.
by fighting crime and going after the bad guys. That is not an immigration action.
Regardless of.
That's right.
Regardless of immigration.
Regardless of immigration
right.
status. APD, it's what I was saying a minute ago. One of the pillars of how we need to navigate this is APD is going to work to assure public safety. And that is a public safety question independent of immigration. It's one of the reasons, frankly, that the APD doesn't have federal jurisdiction when it comes to enforcement of immigration laws, is not trained in that, and we need those people working on things like crime in our city and not being diverted.
Right, even responding to 911 calls in the city.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else that each of you or all of you feel like there is something else, some other message that you think the community really needs to hear on this topic?
I'll just say again to the points that were made earlier about victims and witnesses of crime. That's incredibly important. That we need to continue to work with APD so that we can keep their communities as well as this entire city safer. And then I can't echo enough the mayor's comments with regards to ultimately this police department. Any police department is blind. You commit a crime, we're going to take action on that crime regardless of your immigration status, whether it is an arrest warrant or whether it's a call for service. A crime is a crime regardless of immigration status. Now, once that individual is arrested, that's when that status may come into play in some other form. But as far as the Austin Police Department, that certainly have to really echo those statements in that we're blind to that. We're here to investigate crime, and crime perpetrated by anyone, regardless of immigration status, is something that is a priority for this police department.
Chief?
I would say, like, my heart goes out to, I cannot even imagine as a parent you're a law-abiding citizen here in Austin. You've contributed to this community to live with this fear. And my heart just goes out to them, that is for sure. But I think as far as the APD is concerned, again, we are concerned with community policing, being in the community. We're concerned with crime, addressing disorder and crime. And that's my priority, is that. And it will always be my priority.
Thank you. Mayor?
All I would do is just reemphasize what I said before. We're going to mitigate, we're going to do everything we can to mitigate the fear. You've just heard the chief talk about that. We're going to provide public safety, and we're going to act in a way where we do no harm.